Gopi Janavallabha Girivaradhari Yashodanandana Braja Janaranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Jaya Radha Gopinath, Radha Gopinath, Shri Radhe. Jaya Gaurani Thai, Jaya Gaurani Thai, Jaya Gaurani Thai, Jaya Gaurani Thai. Jaya Jagannatha, Jaya Jagannatha, Jaya Baladeva, Jaya Subhadra. Jaya Jaya Prabhupada, 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 Jaya Jaya Prabhupada. Jaya Jaya Gurudev, 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 Jaya Jaya Gurudev. Nitai Go Premanandi. Jai Om Vishnupada Paramhamsa Parivajigacharya Ashtotra Shri Srimad His Divine Grace Srila Abhayachan Arvinda Bhakti Vedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai Om Vishnupada Paramhamsa Parivajigacharya Ashtotra Shri Srimad His Divine Grace Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Goswami Maharaj Srila Prabhupada Ki Ananta Kori Vaishnav Vrind Ki Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki प्रेम से कहो श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासादि गौर भक्त वृंद की Shri Shri Radha Krishna Gop Gopinath Sham Kund Radha Kund Giri Govardhan Ki, Vrindavan Dham Ki, Mathura Dham Ki, Jagannath Puri Dham Ki, Srila Prabhupada Transcendental Book Distribution Ki, Srila Prabhupada Transcendental Prasharam Distribution Ki, Nitai Go Premanande. Hari Om. So today we'll be discussing a little, the title is Life Lessons from Srimad Bhagavatam. So I would just like to ask if anyone here has not heard of the Bhagavatam. You have not heard? Good. Well, we'll try to, you too. Your mom has one. Okay. Are you reading it? Good. Okay. So before we read or before we discuss anything from the Bhagavatam, we usually ask for blessings from the higher authorities. So our higher, those sages who've given us this transcendental literature. So you can all repeat after me. It's not very difficult to follow. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So we are living in this age, or most importantly, we're living at a time that we're all faced by some kind of fear. So we recently just passed through this pandemic, and obviously there are fears that there'll be future pandemics to come, and there'll be other outbreaks, or there'll be other calamities that we'll be exposed to. So there's always some kind of fear that we all actually are going through in our lives. What does the Bhagavatam say about this? So this book that I'm holding up here is actually the first part of a 12 series of books called the Srimad Bhagavatam. If you don't have it, please see the devotees outside. And if you do have it, as I've just been told, please read it. Today, hopefully, we'll share some instructions from here. Although, like I said, this book is 18 series, so there are 12 cantos, like how there are 12 months in a year. So there are 18 sets of books, and obviously we can't compress all of them in merely 45 minutes, but we'll touch on some instructive stories or some instructive lessons that we can take from us, from the session today. So, like I said earlier, we live in a time that's plagued with fear. We all have, there's different kinds of fear we all overcome. We all go through in our lives to compensate for any sort of illnesses or any sickness that we may have. What do? We go and purchase health insurance. Is that right? Similarly, if we have a house and we want to protect our belongings, then we usually get house insurance or contents insurance. And one thing that a lot of us do is that we try to protect us not from death, but to protect us from what, anything that can ensue from death, like our property and such, we usually get life insurance. So hopefully those that will be affected by it will be compensated, or there'll be something for them in order to carry on with their lives. However, there's one kind of fear that we really can't insure ourselves against. Is there anyone here that would like to take a guess? Sorry? Death. Well, I just said by purchasing life insurance, we can somehow mitigate that. I mean, obviously, that doesn't stop us from dying, but we can get. But I'm looking for something else. We are pretty much there. Any other takers for this? So there's this stress, okay? So what the Bhagavatam specifically addresses is that there is a failure which we can't really mitigate through our own means, and that's the fear of failure. So there's always this fear that we may fall short in our duties. There'll be some discrepancy in our in our duties that we do. If I'm a student, I may not be able to pass my exams. If I'm a parent, what if my child doesn't, perform as expected? If I'm working, what if I'm made redundant? So there's always this fear of failure. What if I don't make it? So when you are reading through the pages of the Bhagavatam, there's a constant theme, and that theme is that everything in this world is constantly changing. The situation we are in right now, the people we are surrounded by, anything that's we can't really control, that's outside of us, is always subject to change. So much so that, that change actually brings about fear and discomfort in our lives, in our own perspective on how we see things. Srimad Bhagavatam is actually filled or enriched, I would say, with spiritual insights that can help us deal with every situation that we may ever come across. When we turn to the page of the Bhagavatam, we'll find a story, or we'll find an inspiring personality, or we'll find some philosophical exchange that will speak to us what exactly we're going through at that moment. So, whenever I speak with some devotees for myself, or whenever they share, they say that whenever they've had any trouble or anything that's disturbing them, anything that they would seek some clarity on, all that they do is that they just close their eyes and they just turn to the page of the Bhagavatam, and the page that opens up randomly will actually contain some instruction or some valuable lesson which will actually speak to their situation. So, like I said, for those that do have the Bhagavatam, this is because the Bhagavatam is actually the literary incarnation of Krishna. So a lot of us here, especially for all those that are here, all those that are visiting the temple today and do visit the temple on a regular basis, come to see Shri Shri Radha Gopinath, all of us have the desire to take Shri Shri Radha Gopinath to our homes. All of us want Krishna in our homes. So Krishna is wanting to come to your home and is readily available through the medium of Srimad Bhagavatam. So, coming to the topic today, life lessons from the Bhagavatam. What does the Bhagavatam really have to say about this fear of failure? So, Bhagavatam speaks on this failure or this human trait of weaknesses, in so many various pastimes, so many various instructions. In fact, Bhagavatam is not at all surprised, because we as humans, at least I would say, we're all humans sitting here. Because, if you've read the Bhagavad Gita, if you've read other texts, you'll see that as humans we have imperfect senses, due to which we are constantly in illusion. That means we don't see things as they are. And because we don't see things, or we don't perceive reality as it is, there's a tendency to commit mistakes. There'll always be some error on our part. And because of that, so there's a tendency for us to cheat. Not cheat others, but most important, cheat ourselves. So, Bhagavatam is not surprised by it. Bhagavatam, in fact, says it's because if we were perfect, we'd be Krishna, but we are not Krishna. So, we are actually, you'll see in the Bhagavatam, there are stories of devotees of Krishna, stories of devatas or demigods, stories of highly exalted personalities, all committing some sort of discrepancy. There's some mistakes, and how do they overcome it? So today we'll speak on what are some of the weaknesses that we all encounter, and how do we overcome that. So, the Bhagavatam says that failure or weaknesses are attributed to multiple causes. The first cause, although it's not chronological, is actually saying there's weakness on our part, or there'll be some discrepancy on our part due to desire. Kama esha, krodha esha. In the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna speaks on this verse that it's lust, or it's karma or lust only, Arjuna, that bounds us to this material world. So, desire. There's a personality, there are many personalities in the Bhagavatam, but due to time constraints, we'll just focus on a few. There's a personality named Ajamila. In the 6th canto of the Bhagavatam, it's described that this person, Ajamila, was born to Brahmana, or very highly virtuous parents. He had he had access to good training from his very birth. He was highly educated, he was virtuous, he was charitable. Any of the qualities we see that are ascribed to virtue was present in this Brahmana. However, one day he happens to see a man and a woman engaged in some sort of illicit activity. And just by seeing that, his mind gets agitated and he loses all of his good discrimination. So much so that he approaches the lady and he gives up his good wife and children, and he actually marries this lady. He works hard. He gives up all of his Brahmanical duties. In fact, he has his last child at the age of 80. So it's that desire that arises in his mind, and then that's what causes his fall down. So the Bhagavatam calls it as fall down, but it also converts to weaknesses. Because for us, we don't really understand fall down, because in our conditioned state, we are fallen. So we wouldn't really understand what it means. So weaknesses is something we can all relate to. So Ajamil, he has his last child, or he has his child with his wife at the age of 80, but due to his previous training, he named this child Ajamila. He named this child Narayana, which is another name of the Lord. And so much so that at the time of his death, his bodily functions are disrupted. He's not able to focus on anything. But at that very moment, due to the attachment for his child Narayana, he chants Narayana, Narayana, Narayana. He chants this name loudly. And due to chanting the name Narayana, not the child Narayana, but the actual Narayana, he hears it and says, "Oh, someone's calling me." So he sends his messengers, "Go and see who's calling out my name." And they go, and obviously, we don't have time to discuss this whole pastime, but it has a happy ending. That's all I'll say. Then there is another weakness or another fall down due to desire that is described in the 5th canto of the Bhagavatam. That is of King Bharat Maharaj. And it's actually an innocent weakness, because it is said that he was the king of this entire planet, and he had reached such a state of renunciation that it is in the Bhagavatam. I'm not quoting it out of my own imagination. It is said that he was able to give up his family, his wealth, his opulence, his prestige, his fame, everything, just as a person who's just finished evacuating, has no attachment for anything else than just to walk out, and he walks out of his family duties, and he takes up residence in a forest where he wants to focus solely on his spiritual duties. At that very moment that he's fixed in his meditation, it is said that he was chanting the Gayatri mantra 3 times a day, and he was completely fixed in his duties. At that very moment, he notices a deer that's just about to plunge across the river. Unfortunately, the deer, he hears the roaring of a lion, and at that very moment, because that deer was actually pregnant, she, out of fear, she has a miscarriage, and she jumps on the other side of the river and she dies. Unfortunately, what survives is the baby deer. And it's an innocent attachment. It is, in one sense, when he looks at that helpless deer or baby deer, he just wants to give his compassion to someone that's in need. And that's because of someone who's highly exalted, who's filled with transcendental qualities. He's a highly elevated spiritual being. He has this quality of compassion. So it's an innocent attachment. However, he doesn't know the extent of his attachment. So the Bhagavatam is telling us, whenever we have, we should safeguard our desires or safeguard ourselves in such a way that we don't fall prey to this. So he he's so attached to this deer that he gives up again all of his spiritual duties. He gives up his sadhana. He's not able to focus on anything else. He's just constantly absorbed in how he'll look after the deer. Because he feels that the baby deer is dependent on him. And in that very moment, the deer just walks away. And because he's lamenting what's just happened, at that very moment, because he's absorbed in thinking of the deer at the time of his death, he's constantly thinking of the deer. Guess what happens next? His next birth is in the form of a deer. So, in Bhagavad Gita it is described, whatever state of being one remembers at the time of death, that state he'll attain without fail. So whatever our disposition is, whatever is in our mind, whatever we are absorbed in, that's where our next destination will take us to. So, again, it's an innocent attachment, but he didn't know the extent of his attachment. However, his story also has a happy ending, much to the Bhagavatam always heads in that direction. The last, there are many such instances, but there's another such instance that's the fall down based to desire. That's not spoken about much, is the fall down of Lord Shiva. In the 8th canto of the Bhagavatam, we'll be discussing a little from that pastime later on in our discussion today, but it is said that Lord Shiva, he hears that Mohini Murti, an incarnation of the Lord, appears just to steal the pot of immortality, the Amrita, from the demons to the demigods. And after this whole pastime has happened, Lord Shiva, who wasn't there at that time, he says, I would want to see it. Already I know that my Lord is the most attractive being. I just want to see how is he in the form of a woman. How attractive is he in the form of a woman? I want to see this. So he presents his desire to Lord Vishnu, and Lord Vishnu just has a smirk on his face. He's like, do you really want to see this? And Lord Shiva is like, yeah, I want to see this. So it is said that then Lord Shiva, Lord Vishnu assumes the form of Mohini Murti, and lo and behold, he just charms Lord Shiva in such a way that Lord Shiva just completely loses control of himself. It is said that even though his wife, Parvati, is sitting right next to him, he just doesn't care. He's just running around Mohini Murti, and at that moment, at a particular time, he just realizes that, oh my God, what have I just done? And when he realized what he's just done, he goes back to Parvati and he says, how amazing is my Lord? How amazing is the illusory energy of the Lord that I should have expected this. My Lord, already in the form of a man, is the most attractive person, but in the form of a woman, this was my desire, and I'm happy to be defeated. So again, this is also due to desire. Again, there are other stories as well, but like I said, we won't have time to discuss that. But so, the human trait of weakness that's being discussed here, which is caused by a desire. The other is, there is fall down or weakness caused due to transgression. Transgression means the person actually crosses his or her boundary. So there's a story here of, I'm not sure how many of you are aware, but of a personality named Daksha, one of the progenitors of the universe. So when this universe is created by Lord Vishnu, and then Lord Brahma is given this task to populate this universe. So obviously that gets delegated further to be handed over to this personality named Daksha. So Daksha is now one of the progenitors, so he's overseeing, filling up this universe with living entities. However, Daksha has a problem. So Daksha has been asked by Lord Brahma to give his daughter in marriage to Lord Shiva. And Daksha says, Lord Shiva? Lord Shiva practically runs around naked. He's surrounded by skulls of people that I can't even recognize. He hangs out in crematoriums. I have to give my daughter to this person. However, he's forced to, because he's been told by the higher authority to give his daughter in marriage. However, he doesn't see the spiritual quality or the spiritual position of Lord Shiva. A lot of time it is said that a Vaishnava can't be really gauged by his or her external appearance, because it's all their bhakti is, their relationship with the Lord is so deep that, an outsider or a person who's just trying to gauge it from an outside parameter won't be able to fully understand it. So similarly, we can speak like that of Lord Shiva, that he's so exalted. However, he gives his association to the ghosts and hobgoblins. He's walking around with skulls, with just, semi-clothed, but however, he's a very exalted personality. So what happens is Daksha there's a big fire sacrifice happening. There's a big event that's about to happen. And Daksha comes into the assembly, and everyone there basically move down and just pay their offer their respects to King Daksha, or the progenitor Daksha. However, Lord Shiva, because he's so absorbed in his meditation on the Lord, that he doesn't so. And Daksha feels offended, and Daksha then basically curses Lord Shiva. He says, I've been very offended by you. And however, what happens later on is that there is cursing and counter-cursing. There are two parties that are actually fighting amongst each other. And what the Bhagavatam says is that it's actually Daksha's envy that actually caused him to fall down from his position. Daksha loses his head, and later on his head gets replaced by a goat's head. So it is said, and this one instruction that I had heard from a speaker a long time ago, his case Radha Vinod Prabhu. He was saying that this lesson, or this story teaches us that if we have even a slight bit of envy, which we all do because we are actually in this material world, but if we tangibly have some envy, or if we have some, there's been something that we harbor something against some other devotee or some other person, if we don't work on it, if we don't work on our envy, then we will be publicly embarrassed. Like what happens in this instance where Daksha, it's a public embarrassment for him, he loses his head, everyone's talking about him. So, transgression, he transgressed his boundaries. Second person here that we're speaking of here is Durvasa Muni. So Durvasa Muni, as some of you may know already from the Mahabharata, Durvasa Muni is a plenary incarnation of Lord Shiva. He's a very powerful personality. He can travel to different planets and different universes. Durvasa Muni approaches Maharaj Ambarish. And he approaches Maharaj Ambarish, and it so happens that Ambarish Maharaj, the king, is actually observing a vow of Ekadasi. And this vow was a bit, it was a bit different, where he had to fast for a whole year. So King Ambarish is about to break his fast, and at that time Durvasa Muni shows up with his 10,000 disciples. He always has his knack of showing up at times when he's not needed the most. So he shows up, and King Ambarish, due to etiquette, says, Durvasa Muni, you've come to my residence today, I need to feed you first. Durvasa Muni says, yes, let me go have a bath. And it's always whenever he goes to take a bath, something happens. So he goes, he takes a bath, and he shows, but however, when he's taking a bath, the time for breaking the fast is fast approaching. So he approaches Maharaj Ambarish, and Ambarish Maharaj, due to the technicality of him breaking the vow, he, at that very moment, has to decide whether to break his fast or not. And he decides that he has to break his fast, however, by just taking a drop of water. And Durvasa Muni, due to his mystic vision, understands that Ambarish Maharaj has broken his fast. So he gets very offended. And as he gets offended, he goes up to Ambarish Maharaj and he says, you have offended me. And he starts cursing King Ambarish. At that very moment, Ambarish Maharaj, due to his exalted spiritual nature, the Lord's Sudarshan Chakra come to his rescue. So how about we all have, some sort of insurance policy to protect us? For devotees like Ambarish Maharaj, the insurance policy is the Lord Sudarshan Chakra, just to help, him, fight any kind of demoniac tendencies that come. So that Sudarshan Chakra is chasing the Durvasa Muni goes to he goes to Kailash, to the abode of Lord Shiva. He goes to the abode of Lord Brahma, and Lord Brahma is like, look, just keep me out of this. This is between you and, why don't you go to Vaikunta? So he goes to Vaikunta, and as he goes to Vaikunta, Lord Narayan says, look, you have offended my pure devotee. Now you please go and beg forgiveness from him. So Durvasa Muni goes all the way to Vaikunta, and then he comes all the way down back again to Ambarish Maharaj. And Ambarish Maharaj, obviously due to his soft-hearted nature, he says, no, first you come, and it's my turn to serve you. It's the etiquette for me to serve you, and now you're touching my feet. Please, let me serve you. So again, that also has a happy ending. Other pastime in the Bhagavatam that speaks on transgression is, anyone wants to take a guess? What's the other transgression that happens in the Bhagavatam? Just a hint, it's the canto that we're discussing right now. Sorry? It's the fall down of Jai and Vijay. So Jai and Vijay, as you see there, Yogesh Prabhu is here. He's runs a beautiful depiction on the board there. Jai and Vijay are the two doorkeepers of Vaikunta, and it happens to be that four boys, the four sons of Brahma, they basically show up at the door, and because of the external appearance, they look like 5-year-old boys. However, they're the oldest beings in the universe. So they approach them and they tell them, look, kids are not allowed. And, the four boys curse Jai and Vijay, and then they fall down. Again, that too has a happy ending, because after the 3 births, the doorkeepers go back to their service in Vaikunta. Next, fall downs. So we've discussed so far fall downs due to desire. What was the fall down that we discussed right now? Anyone? Transgression. The third is human weakness. Right? Like I was saying earlier, that there is this, because of us being imperfect, or because we are minute, Anu. Krishna, one of the names of Krishna is Achyuta, infallible. That means the one, he never falls down from his position. We are Achyuta, means we always have this tendency to fall down. I was once listening to a class by His Holiness Hanumat Prashaka Maharaj, and he said that we didn't fall down from the spiritual world, we jumped down. That means it was our own doing that we wanted to come down. So we just took a peep and said, okay, what is happening down there? And there you go. We basically came down. So now this is depicted in the pastime of the churning of the milk ocean. In the 8th canto of the Bhagavatam, we see that there is a fight that takes place between the Devatas and the Asuras, so the demigods and the demons. And in that pastime, we see that how this actually starts off is Durvasa Muni has a garland. And he takes that garland and he sees Lord Indra, one of the administrators of the universe. He sees Indra riding his elephant. And he takes the garland and he garlands Indra. And the very moment that he garlands Indra, what does Indra do? He takes off the garland and he puts it on his elephant. And Durvasa Muni is sitting there like, this person is hopeless. And what does the elephant do? He just throws the garland back on the floor. And Durvasa Muni is offended and he curses the demigods, and then they lose all of their opulence, all of their good fame and so on. And then they're defeated in battle by the demons. Now, what happens is, because the demigods have lost what they actually possess, so they go up to Lord Vishnu. And Lord Vishnu interestingly tells them, this is something I found very interesting because he tells them, time is not on your side at the moment. Because you have offended your spiritual master, time is not on your side. However, you need to now go and work cooperatively with the demons to actually churn this ocean, which will actually give you the pot of immortality, which will help you in the future. So, this devotee that I was once listening to, he said that even in our own lives, there'll be times where we may not want to work with someone. There'll be some difficulty that will be, or there'll be something that'll be causing us some grief to work with someone. So, in that time, you have to find a higher purpose to either to forge an alliance with that person. So, in this instance, for a higher purpose, the demigods cooperated with the demons to actually extract the churning of the milk ocean to get the pot of immortality. And it's described in the 8th canto, the demigods and the demons, when they first start churning the milk ocean, they have the mountain and the road. And as they had the mountain and the road, after a while they just get so tired that the mountain and the road just collapses. And guess what happens? They turn to the Lord. They turn to Lord Vishnu. And Lord Vishnu, in the form of Ajita, comes there, he comes up on his Garuda. We don't have a Garuda yet, but he comes on his Garuda and he picks up the Mandra mountain and then the road and he just goes away. Then again, when they're starting to churn the ocean, they all of a sudden see that the mountain and the road are actually collapsing because it doesn't have any stable foundation at the bottom of the ocean. What does the Lord do? He appears again as Kurma, as the tortoise incarnation. And he appears again as the tortoise incarnation just to give stability to the whole churning pastime. Again, as soon as the churning is happening, Vasuki, the snake that's being used as a rope to churn the mountain, is starting to emit fumes. So, I've been in Los Angeles and I've seen I'm not sure in Sydney here, but if someone is sitting in traffic and the cars aren't moving, however, their engines are emitting dangerous and toxic fumes, it's very harmful for us to even inhale a bit of it. So that's what this whole universe was undergoing. At that time, the Lord appeals to or tells the demigods and demons to go to Lord Shiva to help you rescue the situation that they're in. So in this pastime, we see at each and every moment, the demigods, due to their weaknesses, and the demons as well, that they're failing, but the demigods, however, appeal to the Lord for help. So in each and every instant of our life, whatever we are going through, if we are somehow or the other, we take shelter of Shri Radha Gopinath, Shri Gaur Nitai, Shri Jagannath Baldev Subhadra, Srila Prabhupada, or Acharyas, they'll always be there to help us in every situation. And the fourth failure or fall down that's described in the Bhagavatam, again, it's not spoken of much, but you'll see this theme undercurrent in most situations, is fall down or failure due to time. Again, we see this in the pastime of Bali Maharaj. Bali Maharaj is a king he's the king of the demons, and Lord Vamanadev approaches him, and at that very time, Vamanadev asks him for 3 steps of land. And Bali Maharaj says, you can ask me for more because I control this whole planet. And Vamanadev says, if one is not satisfied with just 3 steps of land, how can he be satisfied with anything more than that? So, very important lesson for us. We should be satisfied with whatever we have in our life. And if we are so, then we are opening ourselves to grace and actually higher blessings. So, at that time, Vamanadev takes his 3rd step and he conquers the 3rd planetary, the higher planetary system. At that time, the associates of Bali Maharaj, who are the demons, they feel that they've been cheated, and then they start fighting, with the demigods, and also Vamanadev has to intervene. And it just so happens at that time, Bali Maharaj tells his associates that, "My dear demons, time is not on your side. Just some time ago, you were able to defeat the demigods. However, those same demigods whom you were able to previously defeat are now defeating you." Which means that nothing has changed. They have not gained in strength. There have been no changes externally. However, time is not on our side. And this one lesson that we can take for our own lives as well. We see in the life of Srila Prabhupada. We have the Srila Prabhupada Lilamrita here, however, and it has 2 volumes. However, previously, there would be smaller version of the Lilamrita that would be published. That would be published in, I think, 4 or 5 books. And the first part of the Lilamrita was titled "A Lifetime of Preparation." So, some of us that may have not read the Lilamrita or may have not been fully across Srila Prabhupada's life, we would think, oh, he came to the West, he came to America, he was so successful. However, not many of us, I hope every one of us have read the Lilamrita or at least aspire to read the Lilamrita, will see the first 70 years of his life. Especially you see after 50 or 55, he was actually, he had the desire to print books or write in English. And that too was, there were so many obstacles. He was writing, he was trying to source the funds for his publication. He couldn't get those funds. He was trying to distribute them in Delhi. When he's trying to distribute in Delhi, he was knocked over by a bull. He was constantly facing some sort of challenge or the other. Now, what do we do, right, when time is not on our side? Especially we see in Srila Prabhupada's life, it wasn't that he was just simply, sitting and just saying, oh, when the time is right, then I'll do what I need you to know. He was doing all that internal work. He was focusing on his sadhana. He was studying. He was writing. He was looking for means for which he would be able to fulfill his spiritual master's instruction. And when the time came, when all, as they say, when all boxes were ticked, he was off to America. But even then, when he comes to America, it's not that he had an easy ride. If you, again, read the Lilamrita, the first 2 years, it is said there's so much in the Lilamrita that has not been, there's so much not there in the Lilamrita which happened in Prabhupada's life in the first year of him being in America. So again, time. So today we may have certain assets, certain skills, certain resources at our hand, and it behooves us to use them in the service of Shri Radha Gopinath and the devotees and Srila Prabhupada. Because time is such that it's constantly changing. Now we've discussed these failures. Now, how do we overcome it? Right? What does the Bhagavatam speak of overcoming it? So there are 3 Ds here. And this is something that I took from a seminar that I had heard years ago. However, it's always been something that I meditate on as a part of my service, and devotees that encourage me, and we always, in whatever services we do, is that the first D stands for dedication. So there's a beautiful verse in the Bhagavatam, the 10th canto. Lord Brahma praises Tatenu Kampam Sumikshumano. What Lord Brahma says in that verse is that what the essence of what he's saying is, we may have whatever challenges or whatever that comes through our way. However, if we don't get distracted by it, but if we are fixed in our purpose to serve the Lord, then the Lord is pleased. So a lot of times in our whatever service that we have for the Lord, or whatever engagements that we do, somehow or the other our society forces us to believe that we should always aim for the grand moment of success. So for example, if my service is to do kirtan, for me to really focus, we shouldn't be just looking for those grand moments of success by, I organized this big kirtan, or I organized a big event, or I cooked this amazing feast for the devotees, for the Lord. what the Lord is looking for is not a grand moment of success, but for consistency. That regardless of, sometimes, at least for myself, I always look forward to festivals, and as festivals serve as a great impetus for me to increase my devotion, there's this tendency for me to somehow or the other sideline that apart from the festivals, the major festivals, every day is actually a festival for the Lord. So, if I just want to show up to one Mangala Arati or two Mangala Aratis a year on Janmashtami and the appearance of Lord Gauranga, is that something that I should really boast about? Or what's Krishna looking for? Krishna is seeing that this devotee is coming here every day, whether hail or snow, like some of you today, and every day, who actually come here with full-hearted dedication to serve the Lord, even though sometimes, when devotees are leading kirtan, there may be someone here, there may not be anyone here. However, the dedication is what the Lord is looking for. So Krishna is not looking for a grand moment of success, he's looking at our consistency. Second is determination. So if we are dedicated, if we truly have the dedication to serve the Lord, we will actually have determination. In the Bhagavad Gita, it is said, those who have exhausted their previous sinful activities can take up to devotion service with determination. So that determination comes from us really working on our previous conditioning, for us to really be dedicated and be determined in our service to the Lord. So this determination, again you see with Srila Prabhupada, that Srila Prabhupada, no matter, now a lot of times we have this question that we ask ourselves, how do we know if we're undertaking some project or some initiative, whether we should push on or we should just step back? Right? There's always this question that, okay, I've taken on the initiative, this was an instruction given to me by my authorities, by my spiritual master, by my good counsel. Now I'm pushing on. How do I know if I should push on or whether I should take a step back? The Bhagavatam and, again, Chaitanya Charitamrita and other Vedic texts, they basically say there's a tripod that we should always refer to whenever we are faced with such a situation. And that is known as Guru, that is a spiritual teacher, Sadhu, association of like-minded devotees, or those devotees or those people whose discrimination is unbiased, and Shastra, which is sacred texts. So at any point, whenever we when we find ourselves in such a situation, what do? Is that we always refer to this tripod. We go to our Guru. We ask, I feel like I've come at a plateau in my initiative here, in my service here, what should I do? Or I refer to devotees who will actually give me that counsel. I was once hearing Hanumat Prashaka Maharaj, and he said that he always has, he always has a team of 5 devotees that over the years that he's gained that trust that whatever they say, he'll take on their feedback. So once I'd heard a devotee say that if by some good fortune we have access to good guidance, then that's Krishna's blessing upon us. If we get that, then that's actually Krishna's blessing. So a lot of times we want to come to Radha Gopinath and we ask for blessings. We blessings for our situation, our family, our better position. But what's the true blessing is that we have good counsel. That means those that are willing to uplift us, those that are willing to take us from whatever situation we are in or where we feel that we can't progress further in our devotion to the Lord, they can give us the advice or give us the counsel for which we can come up. So that's Guru, Sadhu and Shastra. So all 3 of them should be aligned at any time that we have such a decision to make. And we see this determination in the story of, I'll just refer to the story that's in the Bhagavatam, that is of the story of Dhruva Maharaj. The very name Dhruva means one who is fixed. Right? And it is said that Dhruva, we don't have time here, but I'll just speak just one line on what his life was. He was the son of a king who actually ruled this planet. However, due to some offense on part of his father, he wanted a kingdom even greater than his grandfather. So he wanted something that would be of the stature of Lord Brahma. So he's encouraged to go to the forest and meditate, because he's been told that wise people go to the forest, and that's where the Lord, hears your prayers, and he gets in touch with Narada Muni. And as Narada Muni tries to not discourage him, but just tells him the reality. Look, you're a child, just give up your stubbornness at this point in time. Go back, and then come back, and then practice your austerities. So, a lot of times, even in our lives, it's our mind that's telling us all these stories. For example, if you want to really improve, or we want to become a better version for ourselves, our mind will tell us, you know what, today is okay, you've done enough, take a break, come back tomorrow, you're just trying to set yourself up for failure. However, if you push against those odds, then that's what Krishna is looking at. So Krishna is not looking for perfection, he's looking for determination. What we try to be is not, we don't aim for perfection, but we strive for progress. Because that progress is what will actually endear us to the Lord. And finally, coming to the final point is, if we are dedicated, if we are determined, what it gives rise to is devotion, bhakti. Beautiful verse again in the Nectar of Devotion. Adho Shraddha, Tada Sadhu Sangha, Bhajana Kriya, Anartha Nivriti. As we go through these stages, the moment we go past the stage of our first association with devotees, we chant the holy name, we relish it, we go through a stage of purification called Anartha Nivriti. As we pass through Anartha Nivriti, we come to the stage of Nishtha, which is firmness. We become firm in our resolve, in our determination to serve the Lord, and it's that devotion that actually pleases the Lord. So, in other paths that are described in the Bhagavad Gita and actually in yoga, it is described that there's a beautiful verse in the Gita, again, chapter 2. Even a little endeavor on this path can save one from the greatest types of fear. There'll be no loss or diminution. So we see, for example, if I'm a student and if I'm pursuing a degree, if I don't attend my classes for a certain amount of time, there'll be a time where the university or the institution will just tell me, look, your time has lapsed, now you can't proceed with degree, from where you left off. You need to now go back to square one and start again. However, in bhakti, that's not the case. Right? In bhakti, everything is eternal. Krishna assures us that even a little endeavor on this path can actually protect us from the worst types of fear. Once I'd heard His Holiness Lokanath Maharaj giving a beautiful analogy, and I'll just say that to end this instruction. He was saying, a devotee once asked him, Maharaj, what's the best advice you can give someone? And Maharaj said, I'm not sure if everyone here has heard of the Kumbh Mela in India that happens. So he said, during Kumbh Mela, there is a particular time, a muhurta, for you to take a dip in the Ganga. So at that time, people start rushing towards the Ganga or the Ganges. And as people rush towards the Ganges, if you are somehow or the other in that mix of people, as you're approaching the Ganges, the crowd just grows bigger and bigger. So there are more people behind you that are pushing you towards the Ganges. So much so that when the right time appears, when it's the opportune moment for you to take a dip in the Ganges, even if you may have second thoughts, oh my God, am I up for this? What's going to happen to me? Even though we may have such thoughts, the force of the crowd will be such that it will be forced to take a dip in the Ganga at that time, and we'll be benefited. So similarly, Srila Prabhupada always would say, we should always remain packed up in the association of devotees. So no matter what our weaknesses are, no matter what skills, whatever we're going through in life, if somehow or the other we just stick to the path, and most importantly, stick to the association of devotees, then perfection is guaranteed. It'll come to us. It becomes our rightful claim, as Lord Brahma says, Bhagavatam in the 10th canto. So I believe my time is up. And so my time is up. We don't have time for any questions, but thank you all for your patience and thanks for listening, and thanks again. Hare Krishna. Granth Raj Srimad Bhagavatam ki, Srila Prabhupada ki, Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda ki. Srila Prabhupada ki.